Lynn was born in the countryside, but she left at the age of 18 for university in the city, and ever since then, she had not been to the countryside for many years until 2 days before Christmas. She had planned to travel back home to spend time with her family during the holidays. But before that, she wanted to experience a day alone in the mountains. A hiking enthusiast, she had always wanted to climb the mountains of her hometown, so she decided to rent out a small cabin near the Canary Mountains, close to her hometown, and then travel the next day to celebrate Christmas with her family. Lynn had found a nice-looking cabin for a cheap price. It was rented out by a farmer named Steve. She was excited to meet locals as well who know the area. Maybe then can help her find great viewing spots and hike trails. Lynn looked at the map on her car and at the sign that read, "To Marlin's Farm." She looked at the listing stating Marlowe's Farm, and back at the map on her car. There seemed to be no other farm in the area. Lynn shrugged and drove her car into the bypass. But when she had gotten to the cabin, it was old, looked abandoned, and the gate at the front was broken. She had been scammed, but as she had paid so little money for the place, she didn't mind, and entered the cabin. Inside was dusty, full of cobwebs, and there was a strange smell, like that of sulfur. The cabin was small, consisting of one room separated by thin walls. Nevertheless, Lynn found the view outside beautiful. There was a large lake encompassed by tall trees, and the mountain, Mount Canary, stood tall amongst the foliage. Since it was still early, about noon, Lynn went out from the back door to take a closer look at the lake, which had a pretty blue color. It was hard to see the fishes, if any were in there, but the splendor of the blue tint captivated Lynn that she decided to take a dip in the lake. It was cold, but not too cold. Despite the winter season, she swam around and explored parts of the forest before taking out a small grill to cook some sausages she had packed. As she was about to start cooking, she realized her lighter wasn't in the bag. She returned to the cabin, but found that the lighter wasn't in her backpack either. Searching around, she hears a sound of it lighting, or at least trying to turn it on, but whatever, or whoever was doing this, seemed to not be able to turn it on and just kept on flicking it. Strange, Lynn thought. The cabin had only one room, and there was no place to hide. She checked under the bed, in the kitchen, and inside the tiny bathroom. Nothing. Could the lighter have just been stuck somewhere, or against something that is causing it to flick? She looked around some more, but was unable to find the lighter. Annoyed, she headed back outside and decided to just eat the bag of chips she packed. But as the sky turned red from the afternoon, Lynn started feeling strange, like the entire forest was watching her. Creeped out and paranoid, she locked the cabin door, but as the back door had no lock, she moved the bed to lean against the door. But as she was doing so, she finds her lighter just below the bed. Creeped out, Lynn got even more paranoid. Who was flicking the lighter then? She took the blankets from the bed and covered herself with it. Opening her phone, but there was still no signal. She breathed loudly, hearing footsteps in front of her, and seeing a figure standing in front of her. The figure pulled aside her blanket and plunged her with an axe. Lynn wakes up from this nightmare, breathing heavily. She looks around the cabin and sees no one. She immediately looks under the bed, but there was nothing. Breathing a small sigh of relief, She lays back on her bed, still somewhat phased, but quietly calming down. That was only a nightmare. I'm being paranoid. The next day, she went on a hike near and found traps scattered around the area. She didn't pay much attention to them, thinking hunters might just be nearby. But as her hike continued, she found walls made out of large wooden stakes, making her unable to go further in. She peeked through an opening in them and saw someone, a strange man, waving at her. Her breath stopped. She looked again and saw him as he smiled and started approaching her. Lynn immediately ran away. She contemplated if that was real or not as she trips, her face falling down on the ground. But she had no time to check on herself, and immediately packed her things and headed back to her car. She started the engine and bolted out of the area back on the road. As she was near a gas station, she called the person who had rented her the cabin, but the man Steve was confused, as he had been trying to call her, wondering where she was. Lynn realized that the place she had been staying in wasn't even the right cabin. She looked back at the listing, Marlowe Farm, and she remembered Marlin's farm. Lynn wakes up and finds herself restrained by ropes, that smell of sulfur in the cabin more prominent, as she's sitting on wet floors, the room dark with boxes, barrels surrounding the small room. She looks around, her mouth taped, but she finds no one. She wiggles slowly towards the door, but realizes she stepped on something strange. Looking down, she realizes it was a dead body. Lynn stopped and looks around, realizing she was surrounded by multiple dead bodies. The smell of sulfur made more sense now. She afraid, but more determined to get out. If I don't leave now, I'm dead, she thought. She hid behind the door and turned it gently, but it was locked. Lynn looked around the room and found weapons scattered on a table. A large axe, a knife, a hammer, and a lighter. She took the knife and began trying to cut the rope. But when she started cutting, she hears someone coming from the door. She immediately ran to hide amongst the dead bodies, and once the man started searching the back of the room, she sprinted out the door. The man rushed after her. As breaks through the window, she ran through the woods, barefooted, her feet hurting, but her survival instincts rushed through her body. She eventually made it to the road and ran towards the nearest gas station, calling for help. Lynn was tired, scared, and traumatized. She was interviewed by police officers, but when she led them back to the cabin, nothing was there. No dead bodies, no man, just an empty, abandoned house. As she was escorted out by police, she heard a lighter flickering again, but no one else heard it.